Ancient monsters reawaken to threaten the modern world as a hero equipped with a mystical power to fight... Wait, this sounds oddly familiar. And yeah, that's probably a feeling you'll be getting a lot watching Kamen Rider Agito. Beginning its run in January of 2001 and ending in January of the following year, Agito was the immediate follow-up to the Heisei Era's instant masterpiece of Kuga. And sadly, while it attempts to recapture the magic of that first series, it's readily apparent that it's only a pale imitation of its much more developed older brother. If you can't tell by this point, this isn't going to be as positive of a review as I did with Kuga. I've said it a few times in previous videos, but Agito is by and far my least favorite Kamen Rider season, as I believe the show has significant and honestly embarrassingly easily fixed problems that carry out through the entire show. But of course, that is what this entire video is going to be about after all, so while spoil the... well, I hesitate to call it fun. Honestly, as much as I love to get angry and rant over things, I'm not really a person who enjoys constantly bashing the same thing over and over for the same reasons. There's only so many times I can say, boy, that was convenient timing for that to happen, or that makes no sense for that character to think that. Oh, and how about the classic, that's just not written well. Obviously, everything in this video is going to be my subjective opinion, and well, that's why we're all here. But at the same time, it'll get really boring if this is just an hour-long video of me saying the same thing over and over and over. And honestly, it'd be just as hard for me to try and find different ways to say it every single time. So, we're just gonna cheat. See, when I watched this series again for review, I didn't do it alone this time. Our wonderful channel artist and my good friend Shay, or Siren Droid, decided to join me, a choice she would soon come to regret immensely. And so, in order to make sure I got her honest reactions for the review, I decided to record our watch-through sessions. So, interspersed throughout this video, when I honestly just don't have anything good to say, we'll let you experience it as we did. And trust me, we are not any nicer about our critiques in the moment. With that said, it's time to get this started. Actually, we can watch this show in a minute, actually. You guys want to know the background on the series? I'm not stalling. Kamen Rider Agito was mainly written by Toshiki Inoue, who, as those who watched our previous installment already know, also previously wrote a handful of episodes for Kuga. Alongside him would be Yoshiko Kobayashi, another incredibly prolific figure in tokusatsu, who within the Kamen Rider franchise alone wrote for Kamen Rider Agito, Ryuki, Den-O, Decade, O's, and Amazons. Although her work in Agito only consists of a singular episode, it is far and away the best episode of the entire season. And also, the one episode Inoue had no part in. Go figure. Once again, returning to compose the music for the series is Toshihiko Sahashi, the composer for Kuga. Although unlike Kuga, Agito's OST would consist of many more songs written for the series by other artists, including the introduction of insert themes, which throughout the series will often play during fight scenes and major plot moments. The show's opening theme, Kamen Rider Agito, often just called Count Zero by fans, cause that's a dumb fucking name, and yes, I know Kuga did it too. I wasn't happy with it then, I'm not happy with it now. It was written by Shoko Fujibashi, who also wrote the lyrics for Kuga's opening and ending themes, and was sung by Shinichi Ishihara, who would also perform the bike's theme, Machine Tornado. Yes, the bike gets a theme song. We will talk about that later, as well as a few other insert themes for the show. I'm sure I can find more stuff to talk about here somewhere. Who am I kidding? I'm just gonna have to talk about the actual show, aren't I? And by the way, that's not just me not doing my research, there's really not much online about Agito's pre-production. There could be many reasons for that. Maybe the information is kept secret for some reason. Maybe it was just gone in some kind of error. If you want my opinion, I think nobody gave enough of a shit to ask. The first episode starts with a group of salvagers, trash collectors. I have no idea why they're here, but they are. A child who they randomly brought to this beach full of trash for some reason finds a strange device with multiple tumblers on it, and because he hasn't seen Hellraiser, the boy starts fucking with it. The boy calls their grandfather over to check it out, and the shot ends with them pulling the kid away from it as the tumblers seem to reset themselves. We then cut to the training area for the Tokyo Police's unidentified lifeform squad, the Grongi Squad. I'm going to be calling it the Grongi Squad. One of the technicians says to start the test as we see a man in a robotic suit begin going through a variety of mildly unimpressive tests. As the tests conclude, we are introduced to our secondary rider for this season, Makoto Hikawa, also known as Kamen Rider G3. What does the G3 stand for? Generation 3. What is it the third generation of? Fucking nothing. It's the only one in the show. G3 is a man-made rider suit that is one of the few holdover references to when Agito was supposed to be a direct sequel to Kuga. See, for those who don't know, Kamen Rider seasons are kinda like Final Fantasy games. Unless otherwise stated, you can just kind of assume that one season has zero ties to the next. Except that wasn't always the case back in the Showa era. Almost all the shows were tied to each other. When the Heisei Era first started, they had trouble deciding if they wanted to continue this or not. Eventually, they decided against it, but before they did, Agito was already in pre-production as a direct sequel. Almost all the references to Kuga ended up being scrubbed out of most of the show, the only remnants being some select lines in early episodes, as well as the entire concept of G3. Within the context of the show, G3 is actually supposed to be a kind of man-made Kuga, a suit designed for a normal human that would allow them to fight against the Grongi. However, as the show will continue to demonstrate, this is complete bullshit, as G3 is utterly incompetent. Our next scene is within the O-Parts laboratory. What does O-Parts stand for? I don't know. I'll see myself out. This is where the object from the opening scene is now being studied by a team of researchers. For some reason, Hikawa is also here to speak with the lead researcher on the project. She tells him that the object is immensely old and seems to be some kind of puzzle. Apparently, nobody in the universe has ever seen a horror movie because they all find opening it to be a fantastic idea. And here you can see that the Kuga references were scrubbed so clean that nobody even noticed when they stole the entire opening premise. So I actually have a bit to say about this next scene. We cut to a school where a group of girls are playing soccer. The ball goes out of bounds and one of the girls go to retrieve it as she notices a pair of broken glasses on the ground. Before the girl can look too deep into it, she's called back by another one of the players. As the camera turns, we see an arm sticking out of the side of a tree. Now for a little story time. See, when I first started watching Agito well before this show was even a concept, I wanted to know if the super dark imagery and tones of Kuga would be continued in this show. A spoiler alert, this is the most metal shit that happens in this show. And I read the wiki page on the villains of the series, where it said they were sadistic and take great joy in killing humans in cruel ways, like putting them inside trees. At the time, I didn't really think much of this, as I just thought, what, like, put him in a tree like a cat? No, I was clearly thinking about this way too fucking hard as they put that guy inside of the tree. After a short cameo by the Resident Evil basement theme, we cut to the inside of the smallest classroom I have ever seen, where a professor is currently going over his students' thesis papers. One of which apparently decided to write his master's thesis on how humans can have psychic powers. Obviously, this is rejected soundly for good reason. After this brief detour into the realm of out-of-fucking-nowhere insanity, we're finally introduced to our main character, 10 minutes into the first fucking episode, Shoichi Sugami, who's come to deliver a textbook to the professor. There's also a joke about Shoichi being a bad cook. It's a running joke. It's not funny, and it makes everyone into hypocrites when they also talk about how good Shoichi's cooking is. When the professor is asked by his students what his relationship is to Shoichi, we get it explained to us that he actually took Shoichi in after finding him on a beach completely without his memories. After another cameo by the Resident Evil basement theme, we catch a glimpse of our third main character in the show, Ryo Ashihara, the unironic best character in this show and the only thing that makes it worth watching. I mean beyond how hilariously bad it can be at times. On his way back home, Shoichi runs into the professor's niece, Mana Kazuya. She's also staying with him as her father recently passed away. Mana is our female lead for most of the show, and her actor would actually go on to continue with the series, playing another minor character in Den-O. We get our next proper introduction to Ryo as we see him doing breath training in the pool at a university. The coach of the swim team comes in looking for him, and we find out that Ryo is actually on leave from the swimming team due to a recent accident he was involved in. Which, funnily, you can tell from the footage it was 100% Ryo's fault as he's driving on the wrong side of the fucking road down a one-way street.
I feel like they're supposed to be implying the truck was passing the car and then hit him, but yeah, that's not a two-direction road. That's a one-way road based on dotted lines.
Yeah, no, that's a one-ass-way road. Ryo was just driving on the wrong side of the fucking road. But confusingly, the coach notes that Ryo actually seems to have more energy now, to which he seems anxious about something for a moment before going back for one more lap in the pool. We return back to the first group we saw, the G3 team, with Makoto Hikawa, Sumiko Ozawa, and Takahiro Omuro. Hikawa takes off the G3 suit and Ozawa notes that he seems to be in thought, something that is often difficult for Hikawa Hikawa to handle. He says that he's thinking about the O parts, but also about the incident we saw with the man that was shoved into a tree. Hikawa says it troubles him because the police can't seem to find any real cause as to how or why he ended up in there. We then cut to a man leaving his house with his wife seeing him off. The woman then sees Ichigo hiding behind a nearby tree, but then brushes it off. The woman heads back inside and sees that her husband left something on the table and runs it out to him. At the same time, we see Shoichi cleaning and Ryo at a swim meet. We then see the man walking down the street as we cut to a figure that was standing behind the tree earlier. At the same time, both Shoichi and Ryo seem to come down with some kind of headache or seizure. We see the figure then attacking the man as it pulls him away towards a tree. After the attack, Ryo and Shoichi seem to regain their composure as the woman just barely misses her husband being shoved inside of a tree. We skip to after the police have arrived on scene and two investigators are looking over the area. One of them notes how the current victim was actually the father of the boy who was murdered earlier that day. Hikawa is inside the house interviewing the woman and he's asking her questions, but she seems to be unresponsive. Hikawa, like the fucking idiot he is, decides that yelling at the woman who just lost both her husband and child in the same day is the best idea he's ever had, causing her to break down. One of the investigators, a man named Hojo, then barges in and asks Hikawa if he really thinks that this case is caused by unidentified life forms. Groggy. Hikawa then tries to explain his position, but Hojo shuts him down completely. Later that night, Hikawa is called by the same woman from earlier who asks to meet with him to tell him about something she might have saw before the attack. Once again, we see the same figure from before, now revealed to be a cheetah man? And it attacks the woman. Shoichi and Ryo once again have strange and violent reactions around this time. Hikawa arrives at the meeting point where he finds the woman's purse, in which he finds a strange photograph, before seeing her body also shoved into a nearby tree. He hears a strange sound and draws his weapon before also being attacked by the Cheetah Man, but is eventually thrown away after being looked over for a moment. I guess the Cheetah Man was as unimpressed with him as I am. Hikawa then calls for the deployment of G3, and the team begins to head out. Hikawa begins suiting up as G3 as the trailer chases after the Cheetah Man, and I have to admit the G3 transformation sequence is a little cool, even if it ends with him being handed what looks like a... Okay, wait. That looks like a cross between a dildo and an artillery shell.
I didn't see it. Oh, that. Yeah, that's a rifle dildo.
As well as the worst green screen effect in the history of Kamen Rider. G3 eventually tracks the cheetah down to a nearby dockyard. He eventually makes contact with it, seeing that his weapons have no effect on the creature. G3 subsequently spends the rest of the episode getting his ass kicked. As I said with Kuga, y'all had better get used to it because he's the punching bag for the rest of the season. Except, sadly, unlike Kuga, the action isn't nearly as good, so it's not as fun to watch. Luckily, before G3 is finished off, he's saved by the power of... Dick Light! Dick Light! I'm not even doing continuity for this. Agito kicks the shit out of the Cheetah Man for a bit before using his admittedly kinda cool rider kick, but then we see two more Cheetah Men hiding in the darkness before Agito just decides to pack up his shit and leave.